The thing about being left for dead is that you're expected to have the common courtesy to actually die. Private First Class Maya Wrench Rodriguez had apparently missed that memo. Blood trickled down her forehead as consciousness returned with all the subtlety of a hangover. Her combat suit was still functioning barely, and the HUD flickered with warnings that might as well have said you're screwed for all the good they did her. Maya blinked twice, dismissing the alerts. The pain in her side suggested something had punctured her armor, something Vespulan. Something designed specifically to puncture human armor. Mission status, she croaked, her voice activating what remained of her suit's AI. Mission aborted. All personnel evacuated to safe zone. Current location DMZ. Status, abandoned. Abandoned. The word hung in the recycled air of her helmet. She replayed the last moments before everything went dark. Lieutenant Hicks shouting orders. The squad retreating under heavy fire. Private Jenkins looking back, actually looking back before sprinting away with the others. Wait, she had called out. I'm hit. But no one came back, not even Jenkins, who once swore they'd never leave anyone behind. Semper Fi, my ass. The Vespulan 7-foot insectoid warriors with exoskeletons that could deflect standard-issue bullets had overwhelmed their position. The mission to scout the alien outpost had gone sideways the moment they discovered it wasn't an outpost but a full-blown hive. Now here she was, bleeding in no man's land, the disputed territory between human and Vespulan space that both sides claimed and neither controlled. The area was crawling with automated defenses, hostile wildlife, and rogue Vespulan patrols. Pretty much the worst place in the galaxy to take a nap. Maya checked her inventory, one medikit with barely enough supplies to patch a paper cut, her engineering multi-tool, a sidearm with 2 clips, and her personal tablet. No food, limited water, and a suit that was leaking oxygen slower than she was leaking blood, but not by much. Thanks for the rescue, Command, she muttered, injecting a small dose of pain suppressant. Really feeling the love. She struggled to her feet, wincing as her wound protested. In the distance, the wreckage of some kind of alien craft sent black smoke into the purplish sky. If she was going down, she'd at least make sure she wasn't the only one having a bad day. Maya Rodriguez hadn't survived 3 tours by being a quitter. Someone had left her bleeding in no man's land. They were going to regret that decision. The first order of business was not bleeding to death, which Maya felt was a reasonable priority. She limped behind a twisted hunk of metal once part of their drop ship and assessed the damage. A Vespulan stinger had sliced through her side, missing vital organs but leaving a nasty gash. The medikit contained a single application of wound sealant, some painkillers that wouldn't impress a child with a scraped knee, and a roll of something that resembled duct tape but cost the military about 500 credits per inch. Military grade, my ass, she grumbled, applying the sealant with a hiss of pain. More like military approved the lowest bid. But with her wound sealed temporarily, Maya took stock of her surroundings. The dropship was a total loss. Bodies of her squad members were conspicuously absent, confirming they'd retreated. Or been captured. Neither option made her feel better. Maya's specialty was making things work that had no business working. Her nickname Wrench hadn't come from her gentle touch, but from her uncanny ability to fix anything with whatever junk was at hand. Right now, that junk included a half-fried communications array, some power cells that hadn't completely exploded, and pieces of her own equipment. 3 hours later, she had cobbled together a directional scanner, boosted her suit's power supply, and repurposed her helmet's targeting system to detect movement at greater distances. Not bad for someone who was technically dead, according to mission logs. The scanner immediately picked up energy signatures from the smoke column she'd spotted earlier. Something had crashed, and recently. Please be a friendly transport with a fully stocked bar, she muttered, limping toward the smoke. It wasn't a friendly transport, and there definitely wasn't a bar. What she found instead was the mangled remains of a Vespulan scout ship, its chitin-like exterior cracked open like an egg. The craft had been designed for stealth, with organic curves and surfaces that absorbed rather than reflected sensor sweeps. Small wonder their recon mission had gone to hell. Maya approached cautiously, her augmented helmet scanning for life signs. One signature pulsed weakly from within the wreckage. One very large signature. Of course, she sighed. Because today wasn't challenging enough. She drew her sidearm and edged toward the opening in the ship's hull. The interior was dark, lit only by flickering alien consoles covered in script that looked like someone had taught spiders calligraphy. A viscous blue fluid Vespulan blood trailed along the floor toward the cockpit. Following the blood trail, Maya found herself face to mandible with a wounded Vespulan officer. Not just any officer, judging by the ornate markings on its carapace and the elaborate helmet now cracked and lying beside it. This was a captain, maybe even higher. The alien's compound eyes swiveled toward her, multifaceted orbs reflecting her own battered image back at her. One of its 4 arms reached slowly for a weapon. Maya raised her pistol faster. Don't even think about it, Bugface. The Vespulan froze, then emitted a series of clicks and hisses. A translation device on its thorax sputtered to life, converting the sounds to rough English. Human female. You are alone? No squad? The voice was mechanical but managed to convey both pain and suspicion. Looks like we're both having a crappy day, Maya replied, not lowering her weapon. Your people left you behind too, here. The Vespulan's mandibles twitched their equivalent of a bitter laugh. Not left behind. Sent away. Disgraced. Captain Click-Thar does not follow orders blindly. Maya raised an eyebrow behind her visor. Well, Captain Click-Thar, I'm Private Rodriguez, and I don't die on command. Seems like we might have something in common after all. The next few hours consisted of what could generously be called cross-species diplomatic negotiations, but more accurately resembled 2 wounded soldiers pointing weapons at each other while exchanging creative insults. Progress was slow. Your species smells like bacterial colonies, Click-Thar clicked, antennae twitching in what Maya assumed was disgust. Yeah? Well, you look like something I'd spray with bug killer back home, she retorted, keeping her distance as she scavenged the wreckage for supplies. Communication improved marginally when Maya managed to repair Click-Thar's translation device with parts from her tablet. The device now worked with only occasional malfunctions, though these led to some interesting misunderstandings. My hive will, untranslatable, your soft-bodied aggressive mating ritual, for this dishonor the captain declared at one point. Maya snorted. Pretty sure that's not anatomically possible, but thanks for the offer. By the time night fell, or what passed for night on this godforsaken rock, they'd established a few key facts. Click-Thar had been ordered to attack the human recon team despite existing treaties. When he questioned these orders, his superiors had his ship sabotaged, expecting him to die in the crash. Meanwhile, Maya's team had been deliberately sent into a trap, with extraction protocols specifically designed to leave behind anyone who might have witnessed something they shouldn't have. So both our sides want us dead, Maya summarized, tossing another piece of debris onto their makeshift fire. The question is why? Click-Thar manipulated a data crystal between his mandibles, a Vespulan method of accessing information through taste receptors that Maya found simultaneously fascinating and gross. Resource deposits, he finally replied. Extremely rare minerals in this sector. Worth, how do humans say it? Many large numbers. Worth killing your own people over, Maya added grimly. Your Commander Ellis and my hive coordinator Vez Keek share communication channels not in official records, Click-Thar continued. They orchestrate this conflict to claim territory without formal war declaration. Maya's brow furrowed. So they're manufacturing border incidents to justify a land grab, and we're the expendable pawns. Correct assessment. Engineer Maya. Click-Thar had insisted on calling her by her specialty rather than rank, considering it more honorable in Vespulan culture. She poked at the fire with a stick. You know, back in the old days on Earth, they'd send canaries into coal mines to test if the air was breathable. If the bird died, the miners wouldn't go in. Your species sacrifices small flying creatures? Inefficient. That's not the point, Maya sighed. We're the canaries, Click. They sent us in to die. The difference is, this canary is pissed off and knows how to rewire explosive devices. The Vespulan's mandibles clicked in what she was beginning to recognize as amusement. Then we must ensure the miners regret entering this particular cave. Maya grinned and extended a hand. After a moment's hesitation, Click-Thar wrapped a chitinous appendage around it in an awkward approximation of a handshake. To improbable alliances, she offered. To surviving abandonment, he replied, and returning with vengeance. Outside their shelter, something large and hungry howled in the darkness. Maya checked her makeshift weapons while Click-Thar readied his own alien arsenal. First things first, though, she added. Let's try not to get eaten before morning. If there was an official guidebook to trekking across an alien DMZ with an insectoid warrior captain, Maya was pretty sure it would start with don't. By the third day, she had compiled her own mental list of survival tips. Never comment on the smell of Vespulan nutritional secretions. Don't ask about reproduction, still blushing from that conversation. Vespulans don't get sarcasm, but they're learning, which is almost worse. They'd been making their way toward the nearest border station, avoiding the more obvious routes where patrols both human and Vespulan might spot them. Their shared goal was simple: reach somewhere with a proper communication array, broadcast the evidence of conspiracy, and hopefully not get court-martialed or whatever the Vespulan equivalent was, which, according to Click-Thar, involved something called enzyme reclamation. That sounded distinctly unpleasant. Movement ahead, Click-Thar chittered softly, his antennae extended toward a dense thicket of purple vegetation. Maya froze, dropping to one knee and raising her jury-rigged pulse rifle, a combination of her sidearm and parts from Click-Thar's ship that somehow hadn't exploded when she tested it. The bushes parted to reveal what looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a centipede, with multiple horns and entirely too many legs. It sniffed the air, turning segmented eyes in their direction. Is it dangerous? Maya whispered. Graknar rarely attack unless provoked, Click-Thar replied calmly. They are docile herbivores that only become aggressive during. The creature bellowed, pawing the ground with 3 of its front legs. Mating season, he finished. Let me guess, Maya groaned. It's mating season. Indeed. And your pheromones are similar too. I don't want to know. Maya interrupted as the creature charged. What followed was a chaotic dance of evasion, with Maya diving one way and Click-Thar leaping impossibly high with his powerful hind legs. The Vespulan landed on the creature's back, using some kind of neural disruptor that made it shudder and collapse, temporarily paralyzed. That was close, Maya panted. Thanks for the save. Your species is remarkably fragile, Click-Thar observed, retrieving his weapon. It is surprising you conquered as much territory as you have. We make up for it by being stubborn as hell, she replied with a grin. Their path took them through the wreckage of previous skirmishes, the detritus of a Cold War occasionally turning hot. Maya salvaged power cells and communication components while Click-Thar kept watch. Together they pieced together more of the conspiracy, falsified attack records, staged provocations, and resource surveys that both governments kept classified. This outpost, Click-Thar indicated on their makeshift map, is commanded by Vex Thor, cousin spawn to Vez Kik. He will have direct communication access to the Hive coordinator. And probably the encryption codes we need, Maya added, studying the layout. But it's also crawling with elite guards. No way we can fight through that. Frontal assault would be unwise, Click-Thar agreed. However, Vespulan outposts require regular nutrient deliveries. The workers who transport these shipments are considered beneath notice. Maya's eyes lit up. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I believe the human expression is, Trojan horse? Close enough, Maya laughed. But we'll need disguises, access codes, and a delivery vehicle. By fortunate coincidence, or perhaps the universe finally cutting them a break, they ambushed a small supply transport the next day. The two Vespulan workers were trussed up but unharmed, hidden safely away from predators with enough supplies to last until rescue. How do I look? Maya asked, draped in worker chitin armor that hung loosely on her human frame. Clickthar's compound eyes studied her critically. Like a molting juvenile with growth deficiencies. Keep your head down and follow my lead. As they approached the outpost in their stolen transport, Maya felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Everything they'd survived for came down to this moment. Ready to make some noise, bug boy. Always soft skin. The Vespulan outpost loomed ahead like an angry hornet's nest, all sharp angles and chitinous architecture, seemingly grown rather than built. Maya hunched in the transport's shadows as Clickthaw chittered authorization codes to the guards. Her translator rendered it as something about nutrient-paced delivery for the superior caste, with added subservient clicking that seemed physically painful for the proud captain to produce. The guards waved them through with minimal inspection. Apparently, no one expected infiltration via the alien equivalent of a garbage truck. Worker drones are virtually invisible in our society, Clickthaw explained quietly as they navigated the bustling corridors. It is both our greatest strength and most shameful weakness. Sounds familiar, Maya muttered. In the military, engineers are just assets until something breaks. They made their way to a maintenance conduit, the Vespulan equivalent of air ducts, though these pulsed with organic fluids that Maya tried very hard not to think about. Her jury-rigged scanner picked up heavy encryption signals from 3 levels up. Command center? She whispered. That's where we'll find Vex Thor and the communication hub. The plan was simple. Maya would hack into the environmental controls while Clickthaw created a distraction in the lower levels. Between the chaos and the sudden malfunction of their atmospheric regulators, they hoped to clear out enough personnel to access the command center. Simple plans, however, rarely survive contact with the enemy. The alarm sounded just as Maya finished rewiring the environmental system. Intruder alert, blared a mechanical voice in Vespulan, which her translator helpfully converted. Human biological signature detected. All warriors to combat positions. Well, crap, Maya sighed, abandoning subtlety and sprinting toward the command center. Her earpiece crackled with Clickthar's voice. Engineer Maya, they have deployed pheromone trackers. Our timeline is compromised. Tell me something I don't know. She panted, rounding a corner and coming face to face with 2 very surprised Vespulan warriors. Maya didn't hesitate. She fired her pulse rifle, the makeshift weapon spitting energy with a worrying whine. The first guard dropped, but the second charged, mandibles snapping. Maya ducked under its reach, using her smaller size to advantage as she slid between its legs and fired upward at a vulnerable joint. The warrior collapsed with an angry hiss. By the time she reached the command center, alarms were blaring throughout the facility. Maya placed breaching charges courtesy of Clickthar's equipment on the sealed doors and took cover. The explosion was more impressive than intended, sending the doors flying inward with enough force to flatten an unfortunate guard. Through the smoke, Maya stormed in, weapon raised. Commander Vex Thor was exactly as Clickthaw had described, larger than average, then with crimson markings on his carapace and a ceremonial helmet that seemed unnecessarily ornate for practical use. He rose from his command podium, mandibles clicking in fury. Human vermin. The translator rendered his speech. Your species' capacity for self-destruction never ceases to amaze, says the bug who's taking bribes to start a war, Maya retorted, keeping her weapon trained on him while edging toward the communications console. Vex Thor's compound eyes narrowed. "You understand nothing. This conflict is inevitable. We merely profit from accelerating the timeline. But by sacrificing your own people? Real noble." The commander's reply was cut short as Click Thar burst into the room from a side entrance, his own weapon trained on his former superior. "Captain Click Thar," Vex Thor's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Reports of your demise were clearly exaggerated." "As were reports of your honor," Click Thar replied coldly. What followed was a blur of combat. Vex Thor was faster than his bulk suggested, knocking Maya aside with a powerful swipe before engaging Click Thar in what appeared to be ritual combat. Chitinous limbs clashed as the two Vespulans fought, communicating in clicks too rapid for her translator to process. Maya scrambled to the console, inserting the data crystal Click Thar had provided. Her fingers flew over the alien interface, thankful for her engineering training as she bypassed security protocols and located the communication logs. Behind her, Click Thar was losing ground. Vex Thor had the advantage of full armor and fresh strength, while the captain still bore wounds from the crash. Maya downloaded the incriminating data and turned to see Vex Thor pinning Click Thar against the wall, a blade-like appendage poised to deliver a fatal strike. She didn't think she reacted. The pulse rifle whined as she fired, the blast catching Vex Thor in his unprotected side. The commander staggered, releasing Click Thar and turning his rage toward Maya. "You will die slowly for this insult," he hissed, advancing on her. Maya backed away, her weapon's power cell flashing critical warnings. One shot left, maybe two. Click Thar's voice rang out from behind Vex Thor. "Commander, face me with honor." As Vex Thor turned, Click Thar launched himself forward in a desperate tackle. Both Vespulans crashed into the command console in a tangle of limbs and angry chittering. Sparks flew from damaged equipment. Maya took her chance. She lunged forward, grabbing Vex Thor's ceremonial helmet from where it had fallen in the struggle. Then she fired her last shot at the ceiling conduits. Nutrient fluid and coolant rained down, coating the command center in slippery residue. In the confusion, she yanked Click Thar free from the melee. "Time to go," she shouted, the data crystal clutched in one hand and the commander's helmet in the other. They fled through the chaos of the outpost, alarms blaring and confused guards rushing in all directions. By the time they reached their borrowed transport vehicle, Maya was laughing almost hysterically. "Did you see his face when you called him dishonorable? I thought his antennae would fall off." Click Thar's mandibles twitched in what she now recognized as his version of a smile. The helmet was an inspired acquisition. "Figured we could use a souvenir," Maya grinned, gunning the engine as they sped away from the outpost. "Plus, I've always wanted a really weird coffee mug." The human border station came into view just as Maya's makeshift translator finally gave up the ghost, sparking pitifully before going silent. In the 3 weeks since their escape from the Vespulan outpost, she and Click Thar had traversed the worst of no man's land, dodging patrols from both sides and surviving on whatever they could scavenge. "This is where we part ways, I guess," she said, knowing Click Thar couldn't understand her words but hoping he'd get the sentiment. The Vespulan captain placed one chitinous appendage on her shoulder, a gesture he'd learned from her, clumsy but sincere. He pointed to himself, then to the human outpost, his meaning clear. "I'm coming with you." "They might shoot you on sight," Maya warned uselessly. Click Thar simply clicked his mandibles and adjusted the commander's helmet tucked under his arm. The message was clear enough, they can try. Approaching the human outpost with a 7-foot insectoid warrior in tow wasn't exactly standard procedure. Alarms sounded immediately, and within minutes they were surrounded by Marines with weapons trained on Click Thar. "Stand down," Maya shouted, stepping in front of her alien companion. "I'm Private First Class Maya Rodriguez, 5th Engineering Division, and I've got intel that Command is going to want to see." Of course, it wasn't that simple. Hours of debriefing followed, with increasingly higher-ranked officers appearing as the information she provided climbed the chain of command. Click Thar was placed under protective custody, which was military speak for locked up but not officially a prisoner yet. The evidence was irrefutable. Communication logs between Commander Ellis and Hive Coordinator Vez Kik, resource surveys, orders for Maya's squad to be abandoned if they discovered the truth. Similar orders on the Vespulan side for Click Thar's unfortunate accident. By the time General Hawkins arrived, Maya had been through the story so many times she could recite it in her sleep. Private Rodriguez, the general said, looking at her with a mixture of annoyance and reluctant respect, "Do you realize what you've done? Prevented an unnecessary war, exposed corruption at the highest levels, and made a compelling case for interspecies cooperation." She suggested innocently. "Also, I brought back a really cool helmet." The general's eye twitched. "You've created a diplomatic situation that will take years to untangle." "Better than the alternative, sir," Maya replied, standing her ground. "And if you're looking for someone to help with that untangling, I happen to know a Vespulan captain who's currently unemployed." 3 months later, Maya found herself in the strangest assignment of her career, diplomatic liaison to the newly established Human Vespulan Joint Commission. Click Thar, reinstated to his former rank by a Vespulan government eager to distance itself from the scandal, served as his species' representative. "I still can't believe this worked out," Maya mused as they prepared for another negotiation session. "They left me bleeding in no man's land, and now I'm helping write peace treaties." "The universe has curious symmetry," Click Thar replied, his new translator rendering his clicks in much smoother English. "Those who abandon others often find themselves abandoned in turn." Commander Ellis and several other human officers were facing court-martial. The Vespulan hierarchy had dealt with their conspirators more definitively. Maya picked up Vex Thor's helmet, now serving as her office decoration, and buffed a smudge from its surface. "You know what the best part is? In the official mission records, I'm still listed as Kia. According to paperwork, I don't even exist. And yet you have caused more change than many who live their full documented lives," Click Thar observed. Maya grinned and set the helmet back down. "Not bad for a dead woman and a disgraced bug, huh?" Sometimes, she reflected, getting left behind was the best way to move forward. And if there was one lesson she'd learned from this whole ordeal, it was that you should never, ever leave an engineer bleeding in no man's land. They tend to come back with inconvenient questions and really weird souvenirs.